Bloodlines. Diana was a goldsmith that is directly related to the tyrant Jacob Frank, whom which the entire New World Order originates. Diana's mother is Frances Ruth Burke Roche, and her real father, following an affair, is James Goldsmith. Not Edward John Spencer. Goldsmith was a Jewish bankster and one of the 20 wealthiest men in the world. Criminal activities such as money laundering and bankruptcy schemes were ignored by the authorities. He was untouchable, and by all accounts a vulgar and unpleasant man. Diana bore an uncanny resemblance to the Goldsmith children, Zach, Ben, and Jemima, who became Diana's confidant. Articles were written that suggested the two could even be sisters. Goldsmith family intermarried with the Rothschilds family. Ben Goldsmith married Kate Rothschild, and Zach Goldsmith married Alice Rothschild. During the breakdown of the marriage between Charles and Diana, Diana held solace with the Goldsmiths, not the Windsors. Carol Goldsmith is the mother of Kate Middleton, who married William. Not quite the Cinderella story the controlled media pushed out. So with Kate being a Goldsmith, and William also of the Goldsmith bloodline, that makes William and Kate kissing cousins, the same as Philip and Elizabeth. Diana was the descendant of Jacob Frank, her mother being Frances Roche, and he had a son called Rox Frank, who changed his name to Frank Roche. Frances Roche is the female equivalent name to Frank Roche. The joining of families, and arranged marriage between Charles and Diana, was the merger of the three families, Windsor, from the German bloodlines Battenberg and Saxe-Coburg-Gothas, the Goldsmiths, and the Rothschilds. Diana's sacrifice. Princess Diana sacrificed by the Illuminati, Luciferians. Lucifer translates as the light bringer or the morning star, Venus. The goddess Diana protected the weak and the environment. Diana was about to highlight the plight of Palestinians before her death, but also expose the global network pedophile cabal. Diana was also perceived as a moon goddess, the opposite to the sun god. Princess Diana died in Paris, and the nickname of Paris is La Ville Lumière, translated as the City of Light. The city of Paris was built by the Merovingians, a medieval dynasty which ruled France for numerous generations. Before converting to Christianity, the Merovingian religion was a mysterious brand of paganism. Pagan kings to the cult Diana. But also worthy of note is one of the 13 bloodline families that pretty much own everything on the planet, the Plantagenet/Pacers. The Pont d'Alma tunnel was a sacred site dedicated to the moon goddess Diana, where they used to practice ritual sacrifices. During those ceremonies, it was of an utmost importance that the sacrificed victim died inside the underground temple. Diana remained in the tunnel for nearly an hour. She finally was taken to Pitti Salpêtrière Hospital, almost an hour and a half after the crash. The car crashed at exactly the 13th pillar, and we are now aware of technology that can remotely control vehicles and planes to do exactly what you want them to do from an outside source. WikiLeaks exposed the CIA through Release Vault 7, where the CIA has the technology to remote control a vehicle for assassination purposes. This was used for both Princess Diana and Michael Hastings, as both were about to expose the global network pedophile cabal. https://udo.be/0igxhap2y. Goodbye England's Rose. The cinquefoil, from the French, 5-part, is a 5-petaled rose found in Christian symbolism of the Middle Ages. The 5-petaled rose is often found affixed to the tops of Gothic arches, the Vesica Pisces-shaped doorways and windows thought to represent the womb of Mary. Some historians have speculated that the rose in Gothic architecture is a secret symbol of the feminine principle, one of a multitude of Hermetic symbols found in these churches. The symbol itself dates back to Roman times, where it was called the Rose of Venus. The rose, with its characteristic 5-petaled shape, mimicked the pentagrammatic path traced by the planet Venus in the night sky. The torch memorial, torch within a black pentagram, over the tunnel is the ultimate symbol of the Illuminati, people that have acquired the secret knowledge of the occult order. This torch is an exact replica of the one being held by the Statue of Liberty, The symbol of the torch or the eternal flame has been used in other high-profile killings, i.e. the JFK tombstone. Their symbolism will be their downfall. Lucifer, light bringer. Paris, city of light. Pont d'Alma, historic place of sacrifice. Memorial torch, light. Illuminati, enlightened ones. Vault 7, remote control vehicles assassinate. History of the global network pedophile cabal, originating with Sabotage V and Jacob Frank. The history of the global network pedophile cabal, how it began, infiltrate, subvert, take over, Illuminati, Freemasonry, Judaism, Sabotage V, Zionism, Jacob Frank, Rothschilds, Sabaton Frankists, Knights Templar, secret societies, Solomon's Temple, Antichrist. Inversion. Wow. A lot to talk about here, so you may need to reread again to fully take in how this cabal took over the planet, and where it wants to take us next. Know the journey, and you can predict the outcome. If you wish to share this information, then please do so either by sharing direct from my personal page, or by highlighting the text, copy and paste into your new post. I have no desire to be credited, I just wish for the world to understand the evil in our midst. Also double check that the information is visible on your timeline, as Facebook does its bit for its masters by hiding the share button, or hiding the information full stop, and only sharing links. See also Freemasonry symbol for Tubal Cain, as it's the same as the Facebook logo owned by Zuckerberg. The clue is in the name. I would also like to express for the record that I would never ever commit suicide. Kabbalah, Cabal, in particular the Lurian Kabbalah after Isaac ben Solomon Luria spawned the entire Messianic movement for the last 400 years. He was known as the Sacred Lion because he could perform conjuring tricks, and this version of the Kabbalah is where all the ritual and magic tricks come from. 16th century. The Encyclopedia Judaica, regarding Lurian Kabbalah states, in no small measure, it prepared the ground for the messianic ferment of the Sabaton movement. This Kabbalah was designed to effect change in the universe, ultimately about altering the structure of the universe. Ritual magic effect change. Sabbatai Zevi, many different spellings, but pronounced Shebtai Zevi, was a Turkish Sephardic rabbi who declared himself the Jewish Messiah on June 18, 1666. 18 being 3x6, June is the 6th month, 1666. Numerology equals 666, the number of the beast. He was a disciple of the Lurian Kabbalah, and at that time he had over 1 million followers, over half of the Jewish population at that time. This movement was known as Sabaton. They were mostly Ashkenazim Jews, but also some Sephardic Jews too. He ordered his followers saying that every word in the Torah is true but in the opposite sense, invert. So do not kill. Became do kill. Other taboo practices such as pedophilia, incest, bestiality, wife swapping, sex orgies, adultery, theft, lies, murder etc. were encouraged. Sabbatai then had all of his followers practicing this Lurian Kabbalah en masse, controlling the minds of the followers through sex, much like today. The Sabaton prayer being blessed be he who permits the forbidden. This cult later becomes merged with Francism, to become Sabaton Frankists, also referred to as the cult of the all-seeing eye, also the symbol of the Illuminati. This changed Judaism in worst possible way, and there was a worldwide orgy and debauchery. Christians would call Sabaton Francism, Satanism. Sabbatai Zevi then went to Jerusalem to get blessing from the chief Sephardic Jews, but they were so frightened by the size of his movement, and his power and influence, that they refused to acknowledge him as the Messiah. They told Sabbatai that if he stays in Jerusalem, then we will excommunicate you from the community. He left Jerusalem a bitter and angry man, and decided to return to Turkey. He still had his following. The Sultan of Turkey, Ottoman Empire, was not happy about Sabbatai saying he was the Messiah, and the size of his following, and the influence he swayed, so he had him arrested. The Sultan gave Sabbatai an ultimatum: either become a Muslim or die. Without much hesitation or resistance, Sabbatai became a Muslim. Sabbatai then went to his followers and said, "It's not a real conversion. I was given no choice. You can embrace any faith you want, as long as you practice this is secret." Lurian Kabbalah teachings include, evil is in the mind of the Gentile, and also the evil in the world is from the left hand of God. They believe they are doing God's work. If the right hand is good, then we are working the left hand. Subnote, this is why they have absolutely no empathy towards their actions, as they feel by doing the horrific things they do, that they are not only doing God's work, but they also believe that by doing as much evil as possible, it will reach tipping point and force God to return. But this isn't our God, it is their God, Satan, and I explain the return of the Antichrist later. Sabbatai is then exiled to Albania with 100 followers, where they continued to practice Talmudic and Kabbalistic Judaism. Sabbatan movement then goes underground, becomes a secret practice. Outwardly people become Muslim, but are secretly Sabbatan. They become Christian, but are secretly Sabbatan. So, tell everyone you believe one thing, when really you believe another. Crypto-Judaism. Sabbatai lost a lot of followers, but some, called the Donme Jews, also known as the wife-swapping Jews of Turkey, have continued from the 17th century to this day. As far as the Sabbatans were concerned, they were following the teachings of the Messiah Sabbatai Zevi, not only giving them permission, but instruction to behave that way. Convert to other religions, but secretly stay as Sabbatans. The Donme Jews were instructed to overthrow the Caliph and pave the way for World War I and the establishment of the Jewish homeland in Palestine, Zionism. So they went in and established Freemasonic lodges, the first lodges in Turkey. Operating through these lodges, they were able to overthrow the Caliph. Sabbatai died in 1676. Jacob Frank was known as the 2nd Messiah of the Jews in the mid-1700s. He was a disciple of Sabbatai Zevi, proclaiming he was the reincarnation of Sabbatai Zevi, and thus continued and expanded upon his occult philosophy. This was then the merger of Frankists and Sabbatans to become Sabbatan Frankists cult. He then claimed 5,000 followers to a Catholic bishop to be anti-Talmud and offered thousands of his followers to be converted to Catholicism, infiltrate. Thousands more of these followers across the world also converted to different religions, but remained secretly as Sabbatan Frankists. Jacob Frank ran out of money. A move to Offenbach in Germany then saw Frank get suddenly very rich. Frank had a meeting in the home of Amschel Rothschilds and also met Adam Weishaupt. All three wanted the world to become Sabbatan Frankists and to take over the entire planet, and to do this they wished to control everything from the crossroads of the planet, central point equals Palestine. Frank instructed Adam Weishaupt to form the Bavarian Illuminati, which was in turn financed by the Rothschilds. The Illuminati being a front for the Sabbatan Frankist cult. Give me control of the economies of nations, and I care not who makes its laws. Amschel Rothschilds. The plan being to infiltrate, subvert, and take over. Control a nation's economy, and you control the nation itself. The Rothschilds are generational degenerates that deliberately inbreed to keep hold of the family's wealth, that has been obtained through murder, insider trading, theft, subversion. Rothschilds also gained most of its wealth through trade finance in Hazaria, money lending. The Jews would charge interest, where the Muslims and Christians would not, and have manipulated both sides of every war/revolution since Napoleon times to expand their empire. Most famously giving false information to the stock market that the British had lost the Battle of Waterloo, crashing the market, and buying stock for pennies. Then when the true news came that the British had won, the Rothschilds sold their stock at a much higher rate, and transferred that to gold. This activity would incur serious jail time today. A messenger fell in battle, and in his satchel were the plans of the Sabbatan Frankists, for the Illuminati, for the revolution etc., and as a result all were banned. To carry on activities in secret, the idea was to infiltrate and subvert an organization, and the organization they chose was British Freemasonry. Jacob Frank died in 1791, and had built up a following of wealthy and powerful Jews, bankers etc., and he instructed his followers to go to Poland, and they set up lodges there. Secrecy, infiltration, subversion, takeover, spread across planet. Zionism was the plan to move the Jewish population from Germany to Israel, where they would continue the acquisition of Palestine, and in turn conquer the world. Achieve an untouchable status, where there will be no criticism of any actions, no matter how nefarious. WW1 Both Paul Warburg and Jacob Schiff represented Rothschild banking dynasty interests in the U.S. They financed the entire campaign of Woodrow Wilson, and once he was in the White House, they blackmailed him into setting up the Federal Reserve, owned by the Rothschilds, not the U.S. government. Wilson had an affair at Princeton University with a fellow professor's wife. They also got Wilson to set up the Anti-Defamation League that wanted to label any criticism of the Rothschilds' global control as anti-Semitic. This would soon be attributed to Rothschild's baby, Israel. Q. What country in Europe had no Rothschilds-controlled central bank at the early part of the 20th century? A. Germany. The Rothschilds used the British Empire and control of the US to destroy Germany, as they were becoming a superpower, and needed to be taken down a peg or two. World War I was all but won by Germany. Their submarines were proving very effective at destroying ships carrying supplies and ammunition. England was facing mass starvation and had no ammunition. The Germans offered a peace treaty, with a suggestion the war stopped, and returned to how it was before the war. England seriously considered this, until the German Jews, Sabaton Rothschilds, suggested that the English didn't have to surrender, and could still win the war, if the US was brought into the war. They offered to get the US to fight, if in return, the Rothschilds would be given Palestine. So an agreement was made, and the Jewish-controlled media was used to massive effect to change the narrative regarding Germany, and brought the US into the war, which resulted in a crushing defeat of Germany. Sold out by the German Jews. Alfred Balfour, the Prime Minister of England, received a letter from Lord Rothschild saying since the British were defeating the Turks in Palestine, would there be any objections to setting up a Jewish state there in Palestine? No objections were made, and so what is known as the Balfour Declaration was created. Basis for the creation of the State of Israel, all done by the Rothschilds. England has as much right to offer Palestine, as the US could offer Ireland to Japan. Totally illegal. The Rothschilds then went in and put the first central bank in Israel and the first pipelines through Israel to gain a foothold on the oil-rich Middle East. The Rothschilds claim to be Jews, but they are Sabbaton Hazarian Jews, between Black Sea and Caspian Sea. In the 8th century the king of Hazaria claimed the official religion was Judaism, just like Constantine in the Roman Empire that suddenly declared Christianity was the official religion of Rome. The king of Hazaria most likely wanted to tap into the money-lending business, as 2/3 RDS of Hazaria at the time were Christian or Muslim, both of which condemned interest on loans as usury and a sin. When Hazaria was broken up, the aristocrats fled, some of them to Europe. WW2 Samuel Untermyer August 7, 1933 The president of World Jews Samuel Untermyer kicked it all off by declaring war on Germany, calling for a worldwide boycott on German products, and again pouring vitriol into the ears of the Americans. The Germans were not prepared to be dictated to by the Jewish community that accounted for less than 1% of Germany's population, so Untermyer declared war, saying if they will not bend to our demands, then we will starve them out. Funny how that is conveniently left out of the history books. Untermyer's speech states 600,000 souls must be saved, which is considerably less than the 6 million Jews that is stated as the Holocaust. Benjamin Friedman quotes an even smaller figure of 450,000. After a failed attempt to get Palestine recognized as the Jewish homeland, the head of the Zionist movement was murdered and ultimately replaced by Chaim Weizmann, a vile, repugnant, poor excuse of a man that sold out his own people for the benefit of the secret Sabbaton Frankist movement. known as the Transfer Agreement, between Zionism and the Nazi Party to make life unbearable for the Jews, so that they would move to Palestine. As part of the agreement, the boycott would end on German goods. Chaim Weizmann then goes on to make a speech stating in the upcoming Holocaust, mass genocide planned, and also went to add that the surviving Jews will be strong for Israel. After elimination of Jews in Germany, the only group that remained out of over 100 groups, was a group called Labor Zionism, headed by none other than Chaim Weizmann. How do you always guarantee you win a game? Own/fund both sides. In a paradox, Hitler was also financed by Jewish banker money. Winston Churchill's mother was Jewish, Jenny Jacobson, name change from Jenny Jerome. Winston Churchill admired Chaim Weizmann. Secret societies. Rothschild's secret society, the Round Table, Re. Balfour Declaration between Lord Arthur Balfour was an inner circle initiate of the Round Table to Lord Rothschild, funder of the Round Table. Cecil Rhodes, head of the Round Table, that plundered southern Africa for the Rothschilds. From Round Table spawned Council on Foreign Relations 1921, Bilderberg Group 1954, Trilateral Commission 1972/3 cult expanding itself to Israel, across Europe, to America. A vast network of manipulation and funding, ultra-Zionism to modern day. Freemasonry, King Solomon's Temple, and Satanism. Like all pyramids, it is only a few at the top that know the real agenda. The few controlling the many. Most grassroots Freemasons have no idea of the true agenda, and wish to only do good. But we must remember the golden rule: he who owns the gold makes the rules. And those rules are: infiltrate, subvert, take over. The Knights Templar wanted to rebuild King Solomon's Temple on the Mount. This is what the moving of the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem is all about. Solomon equals soul, the sun, Om, the sound of creation, Amon/On, Egyptian god of the air or hidden one symbolized by the ram. The Temple on the Mount plan will bring about WW3, the Antichrist, and begin tribulation. New World Order. Encyclopedia of Freemasonry. Of all of the objects which constitute the Masonic science of symbolism, the most important, the most cherished by the Mason, and by far the most significant, is the Temple of Jerusalem. The spiritualizing of the Temple is the first, the most prominent and the most pervading, of all symbols of Freemasonry. Take from Freemasonry its dependence on the Temple, leave out its ritual all references to that sacred edifice, and to the legends and traditions connected with it, and the system itself would at once decay and die. Solomon's Temple is to the Freemason what God is to the genuine Christian. Erected upon its ruins, the Temple of Zerubbabel. To the Master Mason, Solomon's Temple is the symbol of life; to the Royal Arch, Zerubbabel is symbol of future life and life eternal. Former being the symbolism of the search for truth, the latter being its discovery. The Antichrist will walk into a rebuilt temple standing on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem, declare himself to be God, demand to be worshipped as such, and erect a talking image made in his likeness. Basically, Solomon didn't build exactly to the plans, so God allowed it to be destroyed to be built again according to the exact plans. The human body is the temple. The Holy of Holies doorway was shaped like a vagina and covered by a curtain, and only a high priest was allowed in. Likewise, the needles of ancient Egypt represent the male phallus or male energy. The Freemasonry apron representing the curtain of the temple, hiding the phallus. The Star of David or six-pointed star, representing the satanic sex cult, an upward triangle entering a downward triangle. The upward triangle representing the male phallus, the downward triangle representing the vagina. The building of the temple will see the return of God. Not the God of love and creation, but their God. The Antichrist. We live in an inverted world. Inverted, subverted, and taken over. We live in an inverted world. Everything is backwards. Everything is upside down. Doctors destroy health, lawyers destroy justice, Universities destroy knowledge, governments destroy freedom, the major media destroy information, and religion destroys spirituality. The magic of the Sabbatan Frankists.